Welcome, everyone. We appreciate you taking the time to attend our webinar with through our Business Sustainability and Recovery series. We're very excited to have you all here, as well as Sheila and Steve. A few housekeeping items before I get into their biographies is, if you have a question, there is at the bottom of your screen, there is a tab that says Manage Participants or Participants. Mine may say Manage, but if you click on that, and in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see a little tab that says Raise Hand. Just click on that button, and a member of our team will unmute you, because everybody's muted right now, but they'll unmute you, and you can ask our two wonderful guests a question of your choosing. And then after your question, you will be muted again. This recording will be on our YouTube page. We'll put all of that information in a follow-up email to you, along with some other fun tidbits from today. So let's get to our two speakers, because that's really who you're here to listen to. First up, we have Miss Sheila Burkett. She is the founder and CEO at a successful St. Louis digital creative and technology services company. She is an advocate for women in technology and a dynamic networker. This is true. Sheila knows everybody. Combining her business and technology experience, Sheila helped start Spry Digital in April of 2010, along with her three partners. As CEO of Spry Digital, Sheila believes that every organization, regardless of size, be able to afford and maintain a robust presence and technology platform that contributes towards their business objectives. Spry Digital bases their work on providing the highest quality, customized, and scalable solution for every client. Prior to Spry Digital, Sheila was a partner at Edward Jones with over 20 years of experience in their information systems division. At Edward Jones, she was the senior director and partner responsible for leading the strategic technology planning process, project management office, IS internal controls, and executed a worldwide communication effort on the vision for technology at Edward Jones. She has her bachelor's degree from St. Louis with an emphasis in information systems. She also received an MBA from WashU in 1999. Along with keeping up with her family and running her businesses, Sheila is very active in the community. Along with work at Spry Digital, Sheila and her husband, Stephen, own Tuxedo Park Leasing. She is currently on the board of the St. Louis Regional Chamber, the St. Louis Foreign Board, St. Louis College of Business Leadership Council, their IST Advisory Board, and the Arts and Education Council Board. She also serves as the city champion for St. Louis Together Digital Chapter, a divisional administrator of registration for the Sports Car Club of America, is the St. Louis Panhellenic Alumni Association alternate delegate, and an active Delta Zeta alumni. Woo, Sheila, you are a busy woman. Steve is the president and CEO of STL Communications, which is a Chesterfield-based technology company celebrating over 30 years of success. Steve grew up in rural Southeast Missouri and graduated from Perryville High School in 1979. He attended numerous colleges over several years, but at the time did not have the focus or maturity to graduate with a degree from any of them. His work career includes stints at Tubular Steel, Southwestern Bell, Texas Industries, and luckily for him, a sales job with an early start in the fledgling telecommunications industry in the mid-1980s. His inability to be a long-term employee led him to found STL Communications in 1989, working from his dining room table and utilizing his garage as a warehouse. Over the next 30-plus years, Steve founded or purchased at least 6 more technology companies that he can remember with varying degrees of success. Steve is especially proud of the outstanding employees of STL Communications who have all worked very hard to enable STL to become a leading provider of voice, data and IT, wireless, nurse call, and managed services. He also serves on several technology advisory councils was elected as both Vice President and President of the North American Association of Telecommunications Dealers, and is currently a board member of the St. Louis Regional Chamber. He has also been a board member of several local St. Louis banks until he realized it was not a paying position, which neither is the Chamber, just to throw that out there. Steve and his wife, Sandy, attends, St. John Lutheran Church in Ellisville. And when he does occasionally have some free time, he enjoys exercise, boating, and SCCA auto racing. Now I'm going to kick it over to the two guests of the hour, Sheila and Steve.
Well, thank you very much. I'm excited to be on this panel with Steve. Steve and I know each other through the Sports Kart Club of America, where Steve races, and I got to know him through that and the Chamber, so it's really great to be a partner with him on this event.
You bet.
Steve, I hate to admit this, but the first time I worked at home was in '89 when I had my first child. So luckily I had that opportunity where literally they put a dedicated line in my house so that after I had my baby, 4 weeks later, I could start doing work. So I've been working remotely for my entire life, it feels like. So working remotely and having a team at Spry who loves to be able to work remotely, and it's kind of been a smooth transition for us. I think this is a great way for us to share how to make it successful. How about you, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, over the years, I've worked remote on because of different schedules and different timing. But so for me, it's something that's become second nature as well. But I'm assuming a lot of the people that are on our call today are probably not accustomed to working remotely. And based on some of the questions we've gotten and how they adjust to that. And so, the first bullet point here, right? We are tribal by nature, and you've been kicked off the island. The fact that this probably feels a little odd and that people tend to feel a little disconnected if you're not used to doing this is perfectly normal. And so some of the things we'd like to talk about today are, what can you do to continue to feel connected with your coworkers, with your teammates, and also to accomplish the things that you normally would accomplish even though you're remote. So as we talk about that a little bit, just keep in mind that the goal here really for both you as an employee or an owner is to accomplish the things you would normally do in the office, but to do them remotely. And in some ways, we'll talk about potentially you can actually be even more productive than you would be if you were in the office. So let's jump into, Sheila. I know our first line there about connectivity and networking, and you're an expert at that. If you don't mind, can you kick that off?
Not a problem, not a problem. And just to let you guys know, we're gonna stop between each kind of topic and give you a chance to ask any questions. So we remind you, just ask those questions along the way. So, part of all of this connectivity and how to stay connected, I think through your regular schedules is really making sure not only are you doing your meetings, but using some visual through video conferencing on your meetings and making sure you're looking and seeing each other. So being able to make eye contact through the video versus the phone is really important as you're doing that. In addition, you may, as a leader, want to up your one-on-one touch points, whether it's daily or every other day, just checking in with your individuals, especially your extroverts. For those of us who are used to being out, talking to people day in and day out, this is hard being at home, especially when you need that ability to go and talk to everyone. I joke, our introverts are so happy that they don't have to come to the office, but those of us who are out like to think about doing morning coffee sessions that are more relaxed, not topical, but really give everybody a chance to talk kind of like over the coffee machine. And consider, those virtual happy hours. We've had them. Steve, have you guys had any great virtual meetings just to kind of stay connected?
You bet. And so to your first point too, Sheila, we took what were in many cases weekly departmental meetings, and we actually have moved those to be a daily meeting. It's a shorter version, but to give people that touch point and help them feel connected on a daily basis, we've moved many weekly meetings to being a shorter daily meeting, give them people that daily touch point. we also, it's interesting, we're trying to do things that we would normally do in the office. Again, that whole premise of keeping activity as normal as possible. In fact, for us, it actually is a Cardinals casual day, right? Today would have been Cardinals opening day. And so our entire company is dressed in their Cardinals gear. We're having a contest for who wears the best Cardinal outfit today. So again, in that premise of trying to keep things flowing like normal. And surprisingly, and it was a suggestion from one of our employees, I didn't think of this, but we had a virtual happy hour last week, Friday, that was really successful. So we encouraged everyone to bring whatever beverage of their choice and to showcase that during the virtual happy hour. And the fun part really was that as a team, I learned things, and I think others did too, about people they've worked with for some time that they would have probably never learned otherwise. I know more about people's personal lives and some of the things they have going on from that virtual happy hour than I might have ever in any other scenario.
And we had one last Friday also, or last Thursday, and it was fun because their spouses, their kids kind of joined in. People were in different spots at their house or in the backyard, so being able to see that. I've also seen and been shared with how some people had like their all hands check-in meeting where they had, fun masks or fun hats. One of our teammates, he has this habit now, he changes hats as different meetings throughout the day. So, we're constantly in meetings. And so every once I'm like, you've got a different hat on. And that's kind of a fun way to stay doing something interesting. When we first started doing it, it was which room is Sheila in, because it was really trying to keep things interesting. Now I've learned how to use Zoom backgrounds. And so we try to do those. Does anybody have questions about staying connected?
In fact, one of the ones we had gotten on based on people registering was, since we spend time keeping others engaged, what are some tips and tricks to get ourselves engaged? It's an interesting thought, and I really made it a point to try to reach out to employees, and at least 2 or 3 employees, just to talk to them live every day, one-on-one, and just ask, how are you? How are things going? Everything going okay? Are you keeping up with normal activity? Is there anything we can do to help you with that? So I think, not only to keep yourself engaged with employees, but to make sure that they feel connected. That's absolutely important, whether you're a leader in your organization or a departmental leader, to reach out to people on a regular basis, even much more so than you normally would.
And I think the other thing that I've done is, it's when you're the leader and you're the one who has to be up and positive all the time, I've connected in with CEO groups and had my own little tribal groups where you get together and you talk about, how do you keep your group up? What challenges are you having? So finding, just as if you were leader of your own company or your own organization day in and day out, you should have your own tribe that you are going to share with outside of your company. So if you're just needing somebody to uplift you, I encourage you to reach out and find that tribe of people who can help you too.
Yep, that's a great point, Sheila. Yeah, if you're the leader in your company or department manager, make sure that you're meeting with your peers virtually to understand what's working for them and what you could be doing to make sure that people are staying connected.
Yeah. The next topic we were going to talk about is collaboration tools. And while I've been using collaboration tools for a long time, and Steve probably has too, it's amazing how sometimes we start working with clients and realize they really haven't used collaboration tools before or haven't had a reason to use them. And so we wanted to kind of touch on that. And Steve, you want to talk a little bit about some of the collaboration tools? We've listed some here, but some that you use on a day-to-day basis or with your clients?
Absolutely. So, when you think about it, everyone hears the term cloud and things like that, and that's really part of collaboration. So the first one we have listed here, Microsoft Office 365, is email in the cloud. But what people often aren't aware of, that's email, but it's more. It has things like Microsoft Teams built into that, which allows video collaboration and document sharing. And here's one that people tend not to think about. The question we often get is, well, when I work remote, I don't have access to documents that I need, paperwork that I might keep at my desk. Part of Microsoft Office 365 is OneDrive, which is cloud storage for your documents. So whether you're even using a different PC, right? If you have a home PC and you log into your Microsoft Office 365 account, if you're using it the way it's really intended to be, you not only have access to your email, you have access to all those documents you have stored in OneDrive that you might need to be functional on a regular basis. So we certainly encourage people to think about that, because, you know, Microsoft Office 365 is much more than just email.
And it comes with the Microsoft Teams, which is a way that you can do online chats, online videos too, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you know, that's one method. We have mentioned down here at the bottom, full disclosure of Avaya Spaces. STL Communications is an Avaya dealer. In fact, I think as a follow-up, we'll send out a link that will show, we'll give you 90 days of a Spaces account for free. But think about all these collaboration tools. It's more than just video. It's sharing documents. It's sharing information. It's chat. It's much more so than just video conferencing, which we'll talk about more in a little bit. But one of the things I will point out, a little known fact, that a video conference call is traditionally 30% shorter than a comparable audio only conference call. And people often ask us, why is that? Well, it's true, because in a video call, if all the participants are on video, you're not able to multitask, which tends to make calls last longer and people are a bit more distracted. So, you know, we were talking earlier about potentially using tools to be a little more productive in this unusual time. There's a great example. A video conference call with collaboration on average is 30% shorter than an audio only conference call. And I've seen stats, it could be as much as 50% shorter than an in-person call. Again, we still don't want to lose the personal connections, but the actual productivity and efficiency is much better.
That's great to hear. Some other tools we've talked about were Google Business Suites chat. So besides using Google, sharing Google Docs, spreadsheets, you also have a chat option and Google Hangouts. So there's lots there in that space. And so if you are looking for ways to connect, you can use it through those also. Dropbox is a great collaboration tool to be able to use if you're trying to, you know, be able to work in the same document and not be emailing it back and forth. Basecamp, if anyone's using Basecamp, they have what they call campfires, and you can be chatting back and forth through that. Zoom has a chat. GoToMeeting, that's a tool, another one like Zoom, but they have an option where it's called join.me. So if you're not paying for one of these others, join.me does give you an option to where you can share your screen through that. And obviously Cisco WebEx, we've all been on WebEx meetings before, and Uber Conference also offers it. We're a big Slack shop, so we've been using Slack for several years now. And that's a way to do group chats. And we have a lot of rooms that we create and can share based on topics. So we have a work from home room, which is really fun. So they share things that are really related to working from home, but we also have a fitness channel. And so we currently have a monthly fitness challenge going on, and that was going on no matter what. And so in order to stay healthy and fit, we are always putting our challenges out there and have been known to one-up each other and how many lunges you can do in a day, but encouraging also mental health along the way. So those are great tools. Is there any specific questions you can let us know? But those are just some tools to consider and how to do this collaboration without having to email things back and forth or lose touch with each other.
And I will add, all of these, I believe, are available. They have promo specials going on for most of these manufacturers. You know, it's remotely installable. It's not something that you need your IT guy necessarily help you with, because they're all cloud-based. So your ability to sign up remotely from home on a subscription type basis makes it pretty easy to participate in any of these.
And I encourage you to try it out before you go decide to buy one. So, you know, that's the other thing. Don't just jump in and say, we're going to go do it. Do a trial period on these, because what works for one company may not work for another. So let's talk a little bit about video etiquette. Oh, Bethany, did you guys have?
I have a question. I know what we talked about as a team. Hi, Bethany Monahan with the St. Louis Regional Chamber. One question that I have that we had as a team is when you are working collaboratively on a document and for privacy's sakes, should there be a software that we lean into more just so that information truly is private if we're putting it out on this software? I know there's been some hesitation with Google Drives or just, different privacy indications. Would you guys recommend one over the other, or what direction would you encourage companies to move in here?
I think part of it is understanding permissions and making sure that whether you're sharing something in OneDrive or Google Dropbox, there's always looking at who has access to it and password protecting things that are confidential.
And I might add to that, the temptation oftentimes is to sign up for one account and multiple people use that account. The risk of that is then if you're doing document sharing and so forth, everyone has access to whatever documents and so forth you may have shared in previous calls. So my advice would be, even though it is an extra expense, have people sign up for their own individual accounts if you're sharing any kind of sensitive documents and information.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Let's talk a little bit about etiquette with video calls, Steve.
This is a big one, right? Especially for people who aren't used to participating on video calls. And some of this may sound very common sense, but as you all probably already know, you've seen examples likely yourself of people not understanding, how to work or how to participate in a video call. And today's a good example, right? You all as participants are all muted, because if you're not muting participants on a multi-party video call, the background noise gets really difficult. So, whether you're doing it as a moderator or you're asking participants to do that themselves, the best practice and the proper etiquette for a video call is to ask participants to mute themselves or you mute them if they're not actually commenting. It also prevents people from talking over each other, which can be difficult if you have a fairly large number of people on that call. The next one I'll just mention because I have a great example is I was on a video call yesterday with a client and their dog was there, which is great. I love dogs, but they were apparently had a hardwood floor and their dog, as it continued to walk around, was making so much noise that I could barely hear the person talking. So, while I think, especially in what's happening in the world today, it's great. Your dog walks by, your children walk by, let's face it, unless it's a formal meeting, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but also just be aware of the sound issues, right? Of what may sound quiet to you may be amplified via video to the people on the receiving end.
I was in a discussion last night with a group and we were sharing how everyone had created their quiet space. And one of the women had literally set up a card table in her laundry room and had put a sign outside so that when she's in a call, she's like, stop, don't come in, and put a sign so that it was kind of a signal to everyone in the house because everyone's working in the house. So creating not only a quiet space, but a way to communicate to everyone of that, hey, I need this time. And I will tell you, I've unfortunately seen a couple of people sitting in their cars in order to do a call because that was the only place they could find to be quiet. But I think just kind of finding those spaces that you can carve out will help you be more successful also in just day to day and being able to walk away from it at the end of the day. I'm hearing a lot of people talk about the fact that because you're at home, they're doing lots of these things day and night, and you need to keep your boundaries on that too. So I encourage that. One of our others is having a clean area with no distractions. That's important. One of the things Zoom offers is you can do backgrounds with that. So there's no photo bombing. Right. That happens. But I think as leaders, this is a unique situation and we need to be understanding that, there's a lot of pressures on our people who have parents who have kids at home and they have no alternative and may not even have a significant other to help in the house. So as leaders, while we're talking about proper etiquette, I think this is a time where we have to become somewhat empathetic and compassionate about the situation and realize this is not our normal, and people are trying to figure this out and learn about it. So being compassionate about it is really important because people are under a lot of anxiety and stress already, and they're just trying to figure things out. So I highly encourage that to be patient.
So literally, Sheila, to have the office is open sign on the door of your home office or the office is closed sign is something I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. And one of the things that I find, and I encourage this in regular meetings, no matter what, but pause and make sure everyone who's on the call is participating, and make sure that if you're in a meeting that you're calling on people, this is like extra work, but I'm hopeful that this will translate back into regular meetings too. So.
You bet. In fact, I think a video call best practice is to have almost call it a roll call, to go around the room and have everyone identify and check in, right? Much as you would in a regular meeting. I think that's very important so that people feel not only are they participating, to make sure they're connected and they're engaged as part of the discussion. To do that roll call, I think is a great idea.
Yeah.
One thing that I like to talk about, and you guys can probably tell this, I'm a hand talker, right? So on a video call, let's face it, we don't really want to be a talking head, right? So just like you would normally in a face-to-face meeting, right? People tend to feel a little stiff on a video call. Act like you normally would in a regular meeting, hand talk, be expressive, jump up and move around. I mean, let's face it, a video call with a bunch of talking heads can be kind of boring. So keep in mind, treat it just like you would a normal meeting, with whatever level of professionalism, depending on the meeting itself. Which leads into our last one. We're mentioning here, we have a note about pants optional, right? So, we've all probably been a bit relaxed in this work from home environment, but I do think it is very important just for morale, for people to get up, take a shower and participate in the meeting. And you may not dress up, like you would to go to work every day, but to be dressed professionally is certainly important just for people's own personal morale. And I might say maybe for the hygiene requirements of those in their household with them. But but I would add that as you're a leader or a company owner or manager, that's something to watch for. If you see members of your team on video calls that look a little less than professional in their appearance, make sure to make a phone call to them and talk to them about, hey, are you okay? Is there something going on? Is there's something we need to do to keep you focused on professionalism and staying engaged with your job? Because it's easy for people to slip into, a little bit of I don't want to call it a depression, but a little bit of a slump in the midst of this. So reaching out to them personally, if you see any signs of that, is very important, I think.
Yeah, that's a great point. Are there any questions that anyone has about video etiquette, meeting etiquette? If not, we can go on to the next topic.
You bet. In fact, let me just jump in as we talk about internet speeds at home. And some of you may have seen this in the Post-Dispatch online version this morning was an article. Internet speeds in general are slowed down by 19% right now compared to normal, just because of the massive amount of demand. I don't have an exact percentage, but I know cellular networks are strained beyond their normal capacity as well right now, and we're all seeing a bit of a slowdown there. So my first thought is, when you talk about internet speed, if things seem a little slower, that's going to be normal, and unfortunately, I think going to be the new normal for the next few weeks at least, until they have a chance to adjust. But when you think about your internet speed and thinking about a video call, video takes more bandwidth than some applications. Pictures always take more bandwidth. So just be aware of what you're doing and what impact that might have. So I had a call yesterday with a customer who was struggling with some Zoom video calls. And I said, look, shut down your other applications, disconnect your VPN so that your bandwidth is available for your video call if that's your priority. And oh, by the way, you might want to double check if any of your kids are home, if they're streaming YouTube at the same time, because you have a single bandwidth pipe It's a question of how you're using that for different things. So just be aware, it's not just your usage, it's other people in your household that might be affecting the quality of what you see as well.
And I've heard, you may need to upgrade. So maybe what worked before isn't going to work in your household right now. And I have heard rumors that some businesses are actually reimbursing their employees if they need them to do an upgrade. So you might go back to your companies. And I know there were some HR people on here. You might want to be thinking about that if you have employees who may not have had the need for a lot of bandwidth in their home and they're struggling, that may be something to think about, how to encourage them to do that bandwidth upgrade online. So, I do encourage you to do that. The other thing is anything that, like, if you have Slack open, anything that's like a lot of communication going back and forth in the background on your computers, because you may not have a computer that's got enough memory and that's able to handle everything too running. So keep that in mind. You may need to have fewer tabs open on your browser. I found that because I'm not going back and forth to the office, I'm not rebooting my computer as often. And so that might be another thing, is you may just need to close some windows every once in a while just to keep your computer functioning also. So
that's a great point, Sheila, because we typically all, if you carry a laptop, from work to home, you typically shut it down when you go between locations. If you're at home every day or not doing that, it's a great idea to restart your computer once a day just to make sure that you're clearing some memory and not leaving programs open and running.
yeah.
Wi-Fi versus hardwire, but right, we all love Wi-Fi at home. It's super convenient to be able to take your device wherever you want. But if your home Wi-Fi router is over 3 years old, it may not have the speeds you're looking for. So if you're experiencing some issues with speed, even though it may not always be the most convenient, if you absolutely have to, hardwire, direct connect your computer into your router, and that can make a significant difference. So my advice, if you're experiencing speed issues, it could be your home Wi-Fi that's the bottleneck. Try that hardwire connection between your computer and your router, and that may speed things up significantly. And if it does, of course, perhaps not today, but sometime in the near future, if your router's over a few years old, you may want to think about replacing it.
Steve, what about Wi-Fi boosters in the house?
Those are certainly helpful, absolutely. As you get to the edges of your Wi-Fi coverage, your speeds can certainly slow down. So that's a great point, Sheila, to think about, where you are and compared to your Wi-Fi coverage. Look for the bars on your device, on your laptop or whatever. And if you're down to 1 or 2 bars on your device for your Wi-Fi coverage, that can have a dramatic impact on the speed and how quickly you can do things and the quality of a video call, for example.
And as the days get beautiful and you're wanting to sit outside on your porch in order to do your call, which is great, keep in mind that your bandwidth, you may not have Wi-Fi coverage is great out there. And that's another reason why you might want to think about either boosting it or moving your Wi-Fi so that you can actually get better coverage too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Any questions, on those topics? Again, our goal is, to keep people at home doing what you normally do, but we are all reliant on our internet connections to do that.
Hey, Steve, one of the questions that came through is, how about a home control application like Google Wi-Fi? Have you used those much or had much experience with those?
I have not personally used them, but here's a thought, right? If your internet connection, here's the thing we all hate to think about in the midst of this. If you lose your internet connection, worst case, take your cell phone. You can always hotspot if you absolutely have to. Speeds are better than they used to be, but take your phone and use the hotspot feature and use that to link your PC or whatever device. That's your connection of last resort. It's not going to be really fast, but if you are really having serious internet connections or God forbid you lost your internet connection in the midst of this, at least you have that ability to hotspot your phone to your laptop, for example.
Yeah, that's great. Any other questions about connectivity and the home?
I think one we had on the list that came in was the question about working more as a remote worker and just the temptation to work even more hours and feel a little overwhelmed. And the way I would address that is, I think it's very important when you're working from home, keep your normal work hours, even though you're in a different environment. be at work at your normal time, take a lunch at a normal time, take some breaks, get up and walk around, and at whatever time you would normally leave the office, close that office door, turn off your computer, and give yourself some me time away from work. I think that is very important to do. And as tempting as it is to go back into that home office at night, and I have to admit, I'm guilty of this myself, as tempting as it is, don't let yourself do that on a regular basis, because then you'll just feel a bit overwhelmed with the demands of work. Let's face it, none of us want to work 24 hours a day.
No, that kind of goes into our accountability topic. And I think one of the things I keep hearing from people when I talk to them is, how do I shut it off? You know, I'm used to my transition from, excuse me, from work to home and from home to work. That transition was their downtime. One of the things I encourage you to do is, because you're with, if you have people in your house, come to an agreement of 5:30, we're going to turn everything off. We're going to stop work and we're going to go for a walk, or we're going to get together and we're going to make dinner, or we're going to go sit on the back porch and we're just going to chat about our day. So have that, create a transition in your home with your, even have a friend. If you're by yourself in the home, you know, create a transition where you say, hey, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and shut down and be done with it. So I think that's very important. But on the opposite side, if you are trying to manage your kids' schedule of helping them with schoolwork, then be very clear with your supervisor that, hey, from 9 till noon, I need to help my child get onto their Zoom calls and do their Zoom classroom work, and I'm going to work these different hours. Then just be clear about that, because I think that's one of the things that we're running into is there are people who are having to help homeschool their kids while doing their work. So be clear about when your work schedule is going to be so that people know that. You know, for those leaders who've never managed a workforce remotely, really this is more focused on holding people accountable, making sure everyone knows what work needs to be done, when the due dates are, helping make sure and use things that will be clear about your expectations as a leader. So providing all of that accountability on both sides. And if you as the individual can't meet an obligation because of this time, FMLA rules that just got put in place are allowing us as business owners to help accommodate you to make sure that you're getting what you need at home. So if you aren't familiar with what the FMLA rules are, ask your HR department to make sure that they've helped you understand what's available. And I also am encouraging people to check into their employee assistance program, because that mental health part too, and how do you navigate through that? So should be some opportunities there for that. So
I heard a great quote the other day that I think really fits for some of us who have to adjust to the reality of having, you know, either a totally or a majority of our workforce being remote. And the quote was, "We don't go to work anymore. We just do work, regardless of where we are."
Yeah.
And regardless of the timing, you bring up a great point. It's important to let your team know, whether you're the manager or you're the person doing the work, to let them know what's the expectation, because you may not be working normal hours, but if you're getting your work done, again, we don't go to work, we just do work, regardless of when that might be. And I think it's important to have those activity trackers, check-ins, whatever works for your business, to make sure that you as a manager know your team is accomplishing what they need to be doing, but at the same time that your team knows that they're meeting their goals and objectives no matter where and when they're working.
Yeah. And for those of you who haven't implemented a project or assignment tracking, this is the time you're going to have to do that, right? If you already have one, that's great. But a lot of people don't have that mechanism in place of how they're holding people accountable with timelines. So things like using a spreadsheet to just make sure your people know, here's what's been assigned, here's when it's due, and you mark that done. there's tools called Trello, which would allow you to have, here's all the different things that need to happen around a project or an event organization. Basecamp's one that's been used, Asana, Orchestra, Flow, or as simple as having a Google Doc with a common assignment in it. So there's lots of ways to have that activity, project assignment, tracking. And so if you've not done that, start out simple. I always say start simple and then go to some of these other tools to kind of gain that skill of really kind of everyone, the leader and the employee, having that balance checklist.
I think you're absolutely right, Sheila. It's important on both sides that people understand what the expectations are and that management and leaders understand if their team is meeting those expectations. Without a tool, difficult to know.
Yeah. Is there any questions around accountability, project and assignment tracking? I think from an HR perspective, this is probably the hardest thing with working with remote people. I hear this all the time. I don't see them working. How do I know they're working? Right? And so I think we'll see a shift in mindset when you see people getting more things done or able to communicate in a different way. My hope is that kind of gets people out of that check in, check out, how many hours a day did I see that person actually at their desk doing something. So,
Sheila, one of the questions we had as people registered was about monitoring productivity versus privacy concerns. And that's an interesting question because if you're asking people to be productive, but at the same time, yeah, they're working in their home environment. I think that, as long as there are expectations about what the tasks and what's expected of employees, it's really up to them in many cases, the timing and when they accomplish those things. So, they're in a work environment, but if they're working at, 8, 10, 11 o'clock at night, that's fine. It's still a work environment if they're working. So it depends heavily on the job. But I think that separation, that line between home and work, it's become much more blurred. But if you're on a work assignment, you're expected to act as though you're at work in some ways.
Right. One of the quotes I heard somebody say to me one time was, we really are managing adults, and adults, they're managing their own lives. And I think the key is to remember that if people know exactly what's expected of them and know what due dates are and know when to have them done, they're going to meet that expectation. Most people want to understand what's expected of them and are willing to do what it takes to get their job done. And I think if you go into it with that in mind, that, especially in this climate where you hear all these people who are losing their jobs day in and day out, people want to do a good job. They want to be good employees. And I think keeping that in mind, and that there's always special circumstances that people may run into, and being open and talking about what's going on and helping everybody understand that, it's only going to go further and making sure that what needs to be done gets done. Any questions?
Talk about devices and connections for a moment.
Let's talk about how we survive in this world of what's the right devices to buy to make this easier.
So, everyone has their cell phone, obviously, and then what we're hearing from a lot of people is, they're just giving people their cell numbers, which is not a bad thing necessarily, but the thought to keep in mind is that when you do that, then when this all changes and you go back to work, people will still be calling your cell number. And if you're an employer and that's someone's personal cell number, and they're perhaps at some point down the road no longer part of your organization, that can be problematic. So simply giving out cell numbers isn't probably the best choice. What you'll see in our note there are numerous ways to connect people via telephony. You can, in most cases, from your corporate phone system, you can forward phone calls to someone's cell phone, right? So that's the basic way to do that, and just simply have the calls forwarded. That way, when customers are calling in to their normal phone number, someone's answering. There are other ways, and again, depends a bit on what type of software and what type of system you're on, but many people are using a soft phone on their laptop. It's just an application on your laptop that works great. In fact, I personally use that. what the coaching I would give you there is, though, laptops are notorious for not having great microphones or speakers necessarily, and it's difficult to participate in calls. So my advice is get a little plug-in USB speakerphone like I'm using, or perhaps a headset, because if you're going to be using that soft phone in your laptop on a regular basis, without that, the call quality is really going to suffer. It's tough for people to hear you. A lot of the manufacturers actually have a mobile app that you can put on your cell phone that mimics your desk phone so that you can make and receive calls from your cell phone. The nice part here is if you're uncomfortable with giving out your cell number to people, most of those mobile apps, when you make an outbound call, it appears as though you're calling from your desk, and it's showing the caller ID as though you're calling from your desk, which is helpful not only, again, if you don't want to give your cell number out, but if you think about it, everybody makes return calls based on caller ID. And so when people call you back, then they're calling your office number, even if that's at some point in the future, and not calling your cell phone directly. And then last but not least, if you're on a newer phone system, SIP phones, which if they've been out the last 3 or 4 years, in some cases, literally, you can unplug that telephone set, take it home and plug it into your home internet, or it may even have a Wi-Fi adapter in it, and literally your phone calls, both inbound and outbound, can flow from that SIP phone just as though you were in the office.
That's great.
So lots of options there. If you're unsure of what your system is capable of, talk to your management, talk to your IT staff. Again, lots of ways to do that connectivity. The key is, by the way, and I should mention this before I forget, if calls aren't flowing directly to you, please make sure that you're checking the voicemails in your core office system at your normal extension. People tend to forget about that. And if you're answering calls on your cell phone and giving out your cell number, you may still have customers who are calling your office number, leaving voicemails. And if you're not checking, guess what? They're not hearing back from you. So please don't forget to check those voicemails in your corporate phone system, as well as update your greeting. And perhaps, depending on what you're doing, maybe you want to give your cell phone number out on your greeting. You may want to say, I'm working, I'm available, reach me on a different number, or I'll return your call. In our scenario, we actually ask our employees to update their greeting every day with their status. I'm in the office, I'm not, and I'll return your call as quickly as possible. So just be aware, don't forget about that corporate phone system and the voicemails that people may be leaving you there and what you're doing with those.
That reminds me, Steve, since I'm in the office, I'm just going to go double check and make sure that there's actually nothing sitting out there.
Absolutely.
There were a couple of questions that you guys sent in that I don't know if we really have covered them all, but I think one was around individuals staying inspired, right? And how to be up in these kind of times. I'm going to encourage you to stay away from social media and the news as much as possible, and focus on all the good things that are going on in your life and find the positives. It is hard if you are getting sucked into watching the news all day, if you're on social media because it's easier because you're at home and you don't see anybody, or having those friends text you about what's going on. I have kind of put a rule in place. In the morning I get up, I read the news, I find out what's going on in the world outside, even what's happening. I don't look at the news until later at night. And then I'll check anything that's happened that might be significant. And I really have been staying off of most social media channels. I'm in LinkedIn, but I'm finding LinkedIn is still very positive. And I find a lot of people posting some really great, helpful work that's going on in that. And so, as any leader should, they should have people outside their company that is people that they connect with and that they can be truthful about, hey, I'm struggling to be in a positive mood about this, help me just vent, because you need to have somebody to vent to, and you can't vent to your team. You can't vent to your, anybody. Your spouse is probably tired of hearing about it. So I really find having that person that I can go to and just say, hey, feeling overwhelmed, I just need some space, or I need to hear some good things. And sometimes I'm the one who has to start that. So last night I, watched the series Self-Made, and it was an incredible, uplifting, inspiring series on Netflix about CJ Walker, who was an African-American woman in the early 1900s who became the first millionaire, self-made millionaire. And, you think about that and what that individual had to go through to be that successful, that's inspiring. And so I find my ways to look at things like that. I encourage meditation. I encourage you to just take care of yourself too. Steve, how do you stay so upbeat and positive all the time?
I just keep to my regular schedule, and I'm enjoying some of this great spring weather we're having by getting outside some. And I think it's important if you're a leader in your organization at any level. I heard a great article I read actually the other day, and it talked about how people look to you for leadership. And the analogy they used was, if you're on an airline flight and you run into any type of turbulence, what's the first thing you hear? It's the captain saying, it's your captain speaking, here's how we're taking care of you. So my advice and coaching to everyone is to think about, well, no matter what your position in your organization is, make sure that you get on the phone and say, this is your captain speaking, here's how we're going to take care of you, and here's how we're going to get through this, and we're all going to be fine.
Perfect. Well, I don't know. Is there any other questions from anyone? We're getting close to our hour time. I hope this was helpful for everyone. It was kind of fun to do this, Steve.
Absolutely.
Tabitha, do you have anything?
I have loads of questions, but I don't think anybody wants to. I'm the one who asked about the boosters because my husband swears by the boosters, as well as Google Wi-Fi, because then he can turn our kids' Wi-Fi off whenever we both need to be on conference calls, and they're sucking up all the Wi-Fi through YouTube. So great nuggets of information. The one thing that I found was most interesting was, I don't remember which one of you said it, but the video conferencing call is 30% shorter than a phone call, and it's 50% shorter than an in-person call. So we're being more productive. And I don't know about either one of you, but I feel like I'm working more, like I'm more productive. I'm getting more accomplished during my work hours. But that's just me, and I'm sure everybody is different. But there are lots of great nuggets. Like I said at the beginning, we will have this posted on YouTube, and then we will also send out the link in our follow-up. And with that, we appreciate you. Next Thursday, we will have a new a new theme with 2 other dynamic speakers, possibly more. And we encourage everybody to tune in at that point as well. So reach out to us if you have any questions. You can check our website at www.stlouisregionalchamber.com for all up-to-date information as it relates to COVID and upcoming information sessions. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you, Steve. And thank you for everybody who tuned in. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone.
And go Cardinals opening day, if it was.